It's already Thursday, the 16th day of July, 2009. And for this hour and 5 minutes into the next hour, we have Wayne Paul, CPA and brother of Representative Dr. Ron Paul. And, of course, Wayne appears in the Obama deception, discusses the Social Security scam, the Federal Reserve, how the country is bankrupt and we are under emergency powers, and the security of the Treasury is really in control of the country, or how the Secretary of the Treasury is really in control of the country through the War Powers Act. In fact, let's play that scene of Wayne Paul in the Obama deception. Then we're going to go right to Wayne Paul. Here it is.
1913, the Federal Reserve Act was passed. Floor of the House, where 3 members of Congress were on the floor. At that time, they only needed a majority of votes to pass it. So in 1913, the Federal Reserve Act was passed. 20 years later, 1933, under Roosevelt, the United States was declared bankrupt. And in 1933, the Federal Reserve private bank says, okay, USA, what are you going to pledge as collateral on the debt you owe me? What happened by 1936? Does anybody know? We instituted Social Security system, and you and I and our children and our children's children were pledged as collateral on the debt of our government to the Federal Reserve. Wow. And that's where we're at today. It took 20 years to make this country bankrupt, and since then, our government has operated under emergency powers of our government. It is not the president that makes the decision in this country. It's the Secretary of Treasury who turns around and is put in there by the Federal Reserve to manage the bankruptcy. We've been in bankruptcy ever since. So to print $700 billion and to give it away, how do they get away with it? The manager of the bankruptcy is told by the Federal Reserve this is the way to go. That's where we're at today.
Yes, we should point out, Congressman Ron Paul now has a huge amount of sponsors for a bill in the House of Representatives to abolish the private Federal Reserve.
All right, here we go, folks. We're going to go ahead and go back now to our guest, Wayne Paul. Wayne, it's great to have you here with us today.
It's good to be on board.
Where are you joining us from today?
I'm in East Texas at my home today.
Fantastic. Great to have you on with us. Wayne, there's so much to talk about, but let's begin with the issue you were just discussing, how this country was taken into receivership through fraud. Because these shysters, these rhinestone con artists, these flim-flam artists, they create all this out of nothing, and they basically buy up the world out of nothing, and so they want to create a debt black hole, a system to bankrupt the planet, to then bring in their new world order, their new bank of the world, which they admit we're going to be paying our carbon taxes to. And you so eloquently broke that down, but can you further comment on that? Then we're going to go back to the beginning. I want to talk about you growing up with your brother outside Pittsburgh on a dairy farm, and just what formed a great family like yours, and then looking forward into some of the current things that are happening today.
Well, I think the most fascinating thing is the bill that's on the floor of the House now as it relates to audit the Fed. If somebody would have said to me 5 years ago that there would have been over 240 congressmen putting their name on the line to have the Federal Reserve Bank audited, I'd have never believed it. That alone tells you and I and your listeners that the understanding of how the Federal Reserve Bank works and what it does to turn around and confiscate our private property, it's an amazing feat, and I think that's something that'll be changing the world if we can get that accomplished.
Absolutely. You know, I love it when your brother's on television and they say, abolish the Federal Reserve, get rid of the income tax. How are we going to do that when we have to fund the government? And Ron Paul always says, this building behind me, the Capitol, was built for 100+ years before we had this foreign banking takeover. Can you get into the nature of the Federal Reserve, the War Powers Act? You know, go back through what you talked about in that video clip, but in more detail. The nature of our rulers, and it is amazing that 5-10 years ago, almost no one knew it was a private run-for-profit criminal group. Now, it's a big national issue that nobody can audit it, that it says it's above the law. It won't tell Congress. Senator Sanders and others and your brother, the Congressman Ron Paul, say, where's the money? Where'd it go? And Bernanke says, I'm not going to tell you. Everybody, even if they're dumbed down, knows fundamentally nobody's above the law. And they're asking, who are these private bankers that own everything and control the issuance of currency and credit? So break down kind of the history of this group for us, and then more on what is it like for you fighting them for decades to now see it, you know, really starting to be on the run, bleeding. I mean, it's a cornered rat.
I think the fascinating thing about that is if you go to the Federal Reserve Act that was passed in 1913, in that act and in the bill, if anybody's interested, go on the web under government and read that act, and they define that the green stuff we have in our pocket, it is defined as a Federal Reserve accounting unit dollar. Take the first letter of each one of those words, and what do you have? Federal Reserve accounting unit dollar. They told us in 1913 what they were doing, because those 5 letters spell fraud. So when you hear the vernacular that says fraud notes in your pocket, you understand where people got that name. And that having been created then, we're now at a point where printing dollars no longer can be sustained by the productivity of free enterprise. There's just too many dollars in circulation. And I think, as you say, uneducated or people that don't have the research done or haven't done their research understand when they go to the store and go to buy a loaf of bread, and it's now $2.50, and I used to buy a loaf of bread for 29 cents, something's wrong somewhere.
Well, it absolutely is. And now they're going to a whole new unit of a global SDR where the central banks don't even have it backed up by the nation states or by the people paying the income tax into the private Federal Reserve. Now it's just SDRs that are above even the nation state currency. So we're already going to this global cashless society right now. It's just a mopping up process to get rid of the national currencies or to convert them into, you may still be able to pay with cash, but there'll be a thumbprint or a face scan at the time of sale, fully bringing us into their control. And then economically, they can outlaw any underground economy and then socially engineer us and squeeze us and really get the control they want. But getting more into the fact that we are starting to draw blood on these people. We are in the fight. We have shaken them. We have rung their bell in this boxing match. You know, we've made them see Tweety Bird, as they say. And now the public's figuring out they're not invincible. They're not on Mount Olympus above us. What is that like for you after decades of fighting these people to see that starting to happen?
Well, I think the exciting thing for me is the fact that even though I've known this and studied it for 25 years, I think I'm reminded most of all in this past year of a young gentleman in our area who is a senior in high school. And for his passage of his senior year, he had to write a senior thesis. And he studied and wrote his thesis on the Federal Reserve System and how it operated. And for me, a young person aged 17, having the knowledge that this fella has as to how it operates, got to be the most exciting thing. I look forward to the future I think, as Congressman Paul pointed out, it's the education process that really counts. And when we can see that in our young people, I can see light at the end of the tunnel that we're going to turn around and we're going to create a constitutional republic form of government, and it's going to take all of us, starting from the local city offices to the county, to the state, to the federal, but it will change because of knowledge.